I spent 8 years building the analytics department from nothing. I trained every single person on that team. So when the CEO's 24-year-old son waltzed in with zero experience and I was told to make him my equal in 3 months, I should have known it was a trap. But I never imagined he'd cost the company $40 million and somehow make it all my fault.
My name is Rebecca, and for 8 years, I poured everything I had into Meridian Financial Solutions. I started as a junior analyst when the department was just me and 2 other people crammed into a storage closet they'd converted into an office. By the time this nightmare began, I was the director of analytics, managing a team of 23 people, and we were the backbone of every major decision the company made. I'm not saying this to brag. I'm saying this so you understand what I had to lose. It was a Tuesday morning in March when my boss, Senior VP Patricia Holloway, called me into her office. Patricia was the kind of executive who smiled while she twisted the knife. She'd been with Meridian for 15 years and had mastered the art of corporate politics. I'd learned to read her moods, and that morning, something was off. "Rebecca, close the door," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her pristine desk. "I have exciting news." Exciting news from Patricia usually meant more work for the same pay, so I braced myself. "You know Harrison Caldwell, the CEO's son?" I knew of him, everyone did. Harrison had bounced around the company for 2 years, doing stints in marketing, operations, and client relations. Each department head had quietly shuffled him along after a few months. The rumor was that his father, CEO Richard Caldwell, was trying to find somewhere his son could shine. So far, no luck. "Harrison is joining your department," Patricia continued, her smile widening, "and Richard has specifically requested that you personally mentor him. He wants Harrison to understand the analytical foundation of our business." My stomach dropped. "Patricia, with all due respect, we're in the middle of the quarterly risk assessment. I don't have bandwidth to—" "This isn't a request, Rebecca." Her smile didn't waver, but her eyes went cold. "Richard wants his son to be promoted to associate director within 3 months. You're going to make that happen." Associate director, that was 1 level below me, a position we didn't even have open. "We don't have an associate director position," I said carefully. "We do now." Harrison Caldwell started the following Monday. He showed up 45 minutes late in a designer suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, carrying a coffee from the expensive cafe downstairs. He didn't apologize. He just dropped into the chair across from my desk and said, "So Dad says you're going to teach me everything." Up close, I could see why people called him charming. He had his father's sharp jawline and easy confidence, but there was something behind his eyes, a casual arrogance that told me he'd never faced a consequence in his life. "I've prepared a training schedule," I said, sliding a folder across to him. "We'll start with the fundamentals of risk analysis and work our way up to—" "Yeah, I'm more of a learn-by-doing guy," he interrupted, not even opening the folder. "Just put me on some projects and I'll figure it out." I took a breath. "Harrison, analytics requires precision. 1 wrong calculation in a risk assessment could cost the company millions. We need to build your foundation first." He leaned back, amused. "Rebecca, I graduated from Wharton. I think I can handle some spreadsheets." He'd graduated from Wharton, I later learned, with a 2.1 GPA and a degree his father likely donated a building to secure, but I didn't know that then. What followed was the most exhausting 3 months of my career. Harrison showed up late almost every day. He took 2-hour lunches. When he was actually at his desk, he spent more time on his phone than learning the systems. Any feedback I gave him was met with defensiveness or outright dismissal. "I don't need to know how the algorithm works," he told me once when I tried to explain our predictive modeling. "That's what the team is for. I just need to know how to present it." I documented everything, every missed deadline, every error, every instance of insubordination. I sent weekly progress reports to Patricia, carefully noting that Harrison wasn't meeting benchmarks. She never responded to a single one. Meanwhile, my actual job suffered. I was staying until 9, 10 at night trying to keep up with my responsibilities while babysitting a grown man who thought Excel was beneath him. My team noticed. Morale dropped. 2 of my best analysts started quietly updating their resumes. Then came the Westbrook account. Westbrook Industries was one of our biggest clients, a $40 million portfolio that required careful, constant analysis. When they requested a comprehensive risk assessment ahead of a major acquisition, Patricia informed me that this would be Harrison's chance to prove himself. "He'll lead the Westbrook assessment," she said, "with your supervision, of course." "Patricia, he's not ready. He doesn't understand the modeling we use. He can't interpret the datasets, and Westbrook is too important to—" "Your job," Patricia cut me off, "is to make him ready, unless you're telling me you can't do your job." So I tried. I really tried. I created simplified frameworks for Harrison. I walked him through every step. I reviewed his work obsessively, catching errors and correcting them before they could cause damage. But Harrison didn't want to learn. He wanted to look good. And 2 weeks before the Westbrook deadline, he went over my head. I found out later that he'd scheduled a meeting directly with Richard Caldwell, his father, to present a preliminary analysis he'd done independently, an analysis that used completely wrong assumptions, outdated data, and a methodology he'd apparently copied from a case study he found online, an analysis that concluded Westbrook's acquisition target was low risk. Richard Caldwell, proud of his son's initiative, shared the preliminary findings with Westbrook's executives. They accelerated their acquisition timeline based on our expert assessment. I didn't know any of this had happened until the real data came in.
Okay, I need to stop here for a second, because when I tell you what happened next, you're going to think I'm exaggerating. I wish I was. I really, really wish I was. Hit subscribe if you've ever had someone unqualified mess up your work and then blame you for it, because this is about to get so much worse. Drop a comment and tell me, what would you have done if you found out someone went behind your back like this? Because honestly, looking back, I still don't know if there was any way I could have saved myself.
The real analysis painted a completely different picture. Westbrook's acquisition target was buried in undisclosed debt. Their supply chain was compromised. The regulatory compliance issues alone should have been a deal breaker. The acquisition wasn't low risk, it was a ticking time bomb. I ran to Patricia's office with the completed report, my hands shaking. "We have a problem," I said, dropping the file on her desk. "Westbrook is about to make a catastrophic acquisition based on Harrison's preliminary assessment. We need to contact them immediately." Patricia barely glanced at the report. Harrison's assessment was reviewed and approved. By who? I never saw it. I never approved it. This analysis is completely wrong, Patricia. We're talking about $40 million of client money. The CEO reviewed it personally. I felt the blood drain from my face. Richard Caldwell reviewed a risk assessment? He's not an analyst. He wouldn't know a flawed methodology if it— I stopped myself. "We need to call Westbrook, now." "The acquisition closes tomorrow morning," Patricia said coolly. "It's too late." "It's not too late. We can—" Patricia stood up, her voice like ice. "Harrison's assessment was delivered with your department's letterhead. Your signature is on the cover page." My signature, my forged signature, as I would later confirm. Harrison had access to our document templates. He knew how to make things look official. "I didn't sign that," I whispered. "Can you prove that?" The acquisition went through, and 6 weeks later, when the target company's hidden liabilities surfaced and Westbrook lost $38 million, the lawsuit landed on Meridian's doorstep. I was called into a conference room I'd never seen before, on the executive floor, all glass walls and mahogany. Richard Caldwell sat at the head of the table, flanked by Patricia and our general counsel. Harrison wasn't there. "Rebecca," Richard began, and his voice was heavy with practiced disappointment, "this is an extremely serious matter. Our investigation has concluded that the Westbrook assessment failure was due to inadequate oversight of your team.
I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Sir, with respect, your son created that assessment without my knowledge. He forged my signature. I have 3 months of documentation showing he refused to follow proper protocols. Your documentation shows you were responsible for his training, Patricia interrupted smoothly. If Harrison wasn't ready, that's a reflection of your mentorship. I told you he wasn't ready. I have emails. Emails that show you complaining about a new team member, Patricia said. Not exactly a good look, Rebecca. It reads like you were resistant to developing junior talent. The general counsel slid a document across the table, a separation agreement. They were offering me 2-month severance in exchange for signing a non-disparagement clause and waiving my right to sue. This is a generous offer, Richard said, given the circumstances. I looked at the document. Then I looked at Richard Caldwell, at his expensive watch and his practiced concern. I thought about 8 years of my life, 23 people who depended on me, nights and weekends I'd never get back. And I thought about my documentation, the emails Patricia never responded to, the training logs showing Harrison's failures, the original unsigned version of my Westbrook assessment saved on my personal cloud backup. I'm not signing this. Richard's mask slipped, just for a moment. Rebecca, I'd strongly encourage you to reconsider. I have every email I ever sent Patricia about Harrison's performance. I have time-stamped drafts of my actual Westbrook analysis, dated before Harrison's version was submitted. I have security footage requests with IT showing when Harrison accessed the document templates. I stood up, and I have a meeting with a labor attorney tomorrow morning. Patricia went pale. Richard's jaw tightened. You're making a mistake, he said quietly. No, I picked up the separation agreement and tore it in half. You made the mistake when you put your unqualified son in charge of a $40 million account and expected me to take the fall. I walked out of that conference room and I didn't look back. The lawsuit took 11 months. Westbrook sued Meridian for negligent misrepresentation. My attorney helped me file a wrongful termination claim. The discovery process was brutal, but it was also where the truth came out. The IT records showed Harrison accessing document templates at 2 in the morning, the same night he forged my signature. Patricia's deleted emails were recovered, including one where she explicitly told Harrison to handle the Westbrook presentation directly and to keep Rebecca out of the loop. It turned out this wasn't even the first time Harrison had caused problems. 2 other department heads had documentation of similar issues. One had actually been quietly paid off to leave. Richard Caldwell had been protecting his son for years, and the evidence trail was damning. Meridian settled with Westbrook for an undisclosed amount. They settled with me, too. I can't share the number, but I can tell you I paid off my mortgage and took 6 months off before starting my new job. Richard Caldwell retired 3 months after the settlement. Patricia was demoted and eventually left to pursue other opportunities. And Harrison? Last I heard, he's working at another company his father invested in, probably making someone else's life miserable. But here's what I want you to take away from this story. Document everything. Save everything. Back it up somewhere they can't reach, because the people at the top will always protect their own, and if you don't have proof, your word means nothing against theirs. I lost my job. I lost 8 years of my career, but I didn't lose my integrity, and I didn't let them make me the villain of someone else's story.
Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you made it this far, please hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. And if you have your own workplace nightmare story, I want to hear it. Drop it in the comments or send it to us for a chance to be featured in an upcoming video. Because honestly, the more we share these experiences, the harder it becomes for terrible bosses to get away with this stuff. Until next time, take care of yourselves and remember to always keep receipts.